Hi, welcome to my mobile prayer room. This is where my everyday happens. And through the years, the cars have changed and the prayers have changed as well. I remember my first car was a 78 Volvo, and I'm certain that's probably where a lot of my prayer life started growing during that time, because that car, I had to pray for it to start, and it was a stick, which I learned how to drive on that car, and I learned how to drive on the hilly roads of Tacoma and Seattle. And so there was a lot of praying that was being made during that season. And, so through life, working, not working, having a child, going to school, lots of prayers in this space. And there have been times just going about my day that even in the silence, whether it be in the silence or listening to a song, worship music, or just even listening to a message, that the Lord, His presence would fill my car, and that He would speak to me in such a sweet way that just ministered to me. And in fact, there have been times where I've actually been so overwhelmed that I actually had to pull over because of His presence filling this space. And so those were times where in my ordinary, the extraordinary of God came in, and there was this moment of where it's like a holy moment of these times of just feeling the presence of the Lord so strongly and His love for me. So this seems like the perfect place to talk about the name of God, El Roi, the God who sees. And so I wanted to share a little bit about El Roi. El Roi is found in Genesis 16. It's the only place where we see El Roi. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background before we get into chapter 16 of Genesis. So in 15, this story is about Abraham and Sarah, and at the time, it's Abraham is called Abram, and Sarai, in this part of the Bible. And so what happens is Abram does not have any descendants. And the Lord makes a promise that He is going to have an heir, and that his descendants are going to be as many as the stars. And so he hears this and tells Sarai. And so there's been some years that have gone on, and Sarai was not pregnant. So she decides to offer up her Egyptian maid, Hagar, to her husband, to Abram, and tells him to sleep with her so that they can have an heir. Abram does that, and then Hagar finds herself pregnant. When she becomes pregnant, she starts to despise Sarai. Sarai notices it, is upset, goes to Abram and says, "This is your fault. She despises me." And then his response to Sarai is, "She's your maid. You do with her what you will." So Sarai starts to mistreat Hagar. This upsets Hagar, and she runs away. And in this part of the story, in chapter 16, she is halfway to her destination. She's in the wilderness, and she's by a stream of water. In Genesis 16, verse 7, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her." The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude." And then so when I think about that, one of the things I love about this question, this question that's asked. Where have you come from, and where are you going? I often think that the question itself, and the reason why we're asking the question, is sometimes more important than even what the answer is. And as as he's asking this of Hagar, I think that there's this point of where she is having to really even think about what is going on, reflect on her feelings, what's happening, where is she in the story, where did she come from, what was happening, and where is she going. And I think that sometimes, like, when we are in this place of being of seeing the Lord, we need to be positioned to know and getting into this place of where we are honest with ourselves, honest with what has got us to this point, and what are we going to do now that we're at this point. That when we're in this position, in this place of being I guess aware of it and knowing, is this place that we can receive for what the Lord wants to do. And so one of the things I see in this is that he says, the angel says to her, he gives her direction, return to your mistress and submit to her. So that as in that place of where we are seeking the Lord and this place of just feeling unseen, that in that place of like searching and asking those questions, where did I come from and where am I going, that there is this openness that comes in, and then that place of where there's direction that can be given. And then angel of the Lord then says, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. And I think that there's a promise that he's given her at this point. Like, not only is he acknowledging what she's feeling and what she has walked through and has gone through, but there's a directive, go back, submit yourself. And then also the promise of your offspring, you're pregnant, your offspring is going to be, there's going to be so many to count. There's going to be too many to count. It's actually the same promise that was given to Abram, where it's that his descendants are going to be so numerous to count. And so then we go into verse 13. And this is the part where we hear El Roi, the God who sees me. And so she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. You are a God of seeing. For she said, truly here I have seen him who looks after me. And therefore the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. And, you know, I was really thinking about what it means to be seen. And it's different. To see something and to look at something are two totally different things. When you look at something, it's almost like you're scanning. You're looking at what's around you, and you notice these things, but it's like you're looking at it as a whole. It's nothing stands out necessarily, but when you see something, it's intentional. And there's a gaze that happens, and you see all that is in whatever you're looking at. When you see something, there is an intentional gaze. And that is who God is in our lives, and who he wants to show himself as in our lives, as El Roi, the God who sees. And I was even thinking about, like, that whole action of seeing and being seen. That if we are in a place where we are not noticing that God is looking at us and seeing us, it is difficult to even know that you're being seen. And that's why that question I feel like is so important, is where did you come from and where are you going? Because it's that place of positioning ourselves into seeing the Lord and really seeing what is going on. Because I'm certain that many of us have walked and are walking in areas that we do not feel seen, or maybe some of the things in our life that feel forgotten. There's a time in my life that I really I would say this part of my life, I discovered Elroy, the God who sees me. It was during a season about 4 or 5 years ago that I was going through this health crisis, and it was affecting every area of my life. My parenting, my marriage, my work, my ministry, all of it. And it was really scary because I would go to experts and they didn't have any answers for me. They could just tell me that, yes, there's something wrong, but we don't know how to treat you. And it was the season of really a lonely road, and where one that I had to really lean in on the Lord. And it was in this place that I met Elroy, the God who sees me. And in the midst of just what my circumstances were at the time, he gave me a promise, and that he saw where I was, and that he loved me and knew, and that he's with me. And even the promises of going back into Psalm 23, and that season was one that we camped there in Psalms 23 for a while. And when I started to see him and see who I am in him and how he saw me, even though my circumstances didn't change, I started to change. And even when I look back at that season, and it was many years ago, in that season, when he saw me and I knew he saw me, there was a change in my life that I could never, that was never there before. And in fact, just even my heart for people to be healed and whole and just in the Lord was birthed in that season. And that place of being seen by our Creator, the one who loves us and knows us better than anyone else. There was an intimacy there that I don't believe I could have gotten any other way except through that time of really having to lean on him and knowing that he saw me. And so as we are going through this week, my prayer for you is that you would take some time, and actually a challenge of going into Genesis 16 and reading through that again and asking the Lord and journaling, Father, is there a place in my life that has felt forgotten or unseen? And asking the question, where have I come from and where am I going? And another area too is just even praying through, Lord, is there anything that's causing my vision or for me not to see you face to face? Because I know he is looking at us. He sees us, but sometimes depending on what is going on in our lives, we don't always see him looking at us. And that if there's anything in our lives that keeps us from capturing his gaze, my prayer for all of us is that those things would be lifted, that anything that's in our lens, anything that's marring our vision would be cleared, that we would see him and see him for who he is, and that we'd receive Elroy in our lives, the God who sees.